Do you want an idea for using your crafty supplies in a unique and playful way? Maybe get the kids or grandkids involved? Hi, I'm Jess from jesscrafts.com, and I'm going to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get started. I'm originally showing this video right before Christmas of 2021 and thinking that it would be a great thing to play with right before Christmas, make some last minute fun things, or to do with your family during Christmas using some of your craft supplies. Now, I'm using Crayola Model Magic, and I will say I don't know how the properties of Crayola Model Magic will interact with your stamps or dies, if it could do anything to harm them, so please use everything at your own risk. I'm not an expert, but I figured I saw on Instagram somebody was stamping with rubber stamps into some kind of clay. And I wasn't sure what they were using, and I don't really have rubber stamps, but I thought I could figure out how to do something similar. I chose Crayola Model Magic because it's really widely available. It's air dry. You don't have to put it in the oven or anything. Just leave it out and eventually it will dry. And also Crayola products tend to be non-toxic, super safe for kids. And, so I figured less likely to have any chemicals that would harm my stamps or dyes or whatever I use. But again, I don't want to say, oh, this isn't going to hurt your stamps or something. I just don't see why it would. I laid parchment paper over my craft area because, again, I just don't want to be spreading anything on there. And also, I just wanted to be able to clean up quickly. I also covered my rolling pin with parchment paper because this is my kitchen rolling pin, so I don't want any spread to the food or anything like that. But of course, a lot of people have separate crafty rolling pins, or you could pick something else. And I also just found something like a round little jar to cut out my shapes because I actually don't even have any cookie cutters. And again, I don't know that I would want to use my food products. I wouldn't use the cookie cutters I'm using to make Christmas cookies to also work with the clay. I was able to get the round shape, and then I used a bamboo skewer to put a hole in it. And I think a straw would be great as well. It would make a little bit bigger of a hole probably, but a bamboo skewer is what I had on hand. And I wanted to make this as easy as possible because, again, if you were going to do this last minute at Christmas, like you're seeing this video right before Christmas or right afterwards, you don't want to be rushing to the store. I want to show you what you can do, except for if you don't have the Model Magic on hand, which probably you don't, but I just don't want you to have to buy a bunch of extra supplies. That's what I'm getting at. So I experimented with how to stamp on this. I found that I needed to use more pressure than I thought at first, so I would definitely recommend stamping some practice. It's before you make it into a tag or an ornament, whatever your final project is, just practice how much pressure any one stamp will need. I did find that if you used a stamp like that star that actually had some open space in the center, it could stick to the open space between the stamp lines. And so actually more intricate stamps did a better, more interesting job. I also could see why rubber stamps might work a little better. I think they're just a little less flexible than a photopolymer stamp. And I don't have acrylic stamps either. I only have clear photopolymer stamps. So I wonder if the acrylic stamps may not do as well either. But I wanted to experiment with coloring this. Now, you can get Model Magic in a whole bunch of colors. I mean, come on, it's Crayola. But when I was able to pick this up at Target, they only had white. And I thought that's fine because it would be cool to experiment. Could I dye this? Could I change the color of it? I found that I could with distress ink refills. I bet most ink refills in your collection would work. And I think you probably could dye it with food coloring too. I don't know that might be a little bit safer if you're working with kids, although I don't think there's anything in distress inks that are particularly troublesome. But just as another option, what you might have on hand. Try your reinkers, maybe food coloring if you don't have the reinkers. However, you needed a lot of reinker, which I wasn't a huge fan of because they can be kind of expensive. So, and I still I put this red reinker and I very much have a pink result. But what I will say, and I thought was kind of interesting, is as I was hand mixing it, it was creating a marbled look. So because the color is, you had to really mix it and spend a lot of time massaging that color in order to get a consistent color. But if you don't want to, if you want to try something different, don't mix it too much and instead leave it with more streaks in it, and it will look like a sort of a marbled effect, a marbled color look. I, in addition to trying my stamps, also wanted to see if I could try my dies to create a pattern. So again, if you're going to switch to the dies, you'll want to experiment with how much pressure to put. You definitely do not want the Model Magic to be squishing out of the top of the die, because otherwise you're not going to be able to remove it without ripping it. So it's an experimentation in that pressure, but it was able to give a really unique pattern by using a background die. And I thought that that would be, like, it's a little bit faster than, say, in all the little individual stamps. And you could maybe try your stencils too, but I really think that would be a lot trickier because stencils are so much more flexible. I think that the metal die is a better option. Maybe your embossing folders too, though, like pushing your embossing folder into it or pushing it into your embossing folder and then removing it pretty carefully. I did not find that it left any residue on anything that I used. It all peeled off really easily, and I bet it would peel off even more easily once it dried because it hardens a little bit, and it's not going to harden to like onto anything as far as my experience was. Instead, it would just flake off as far as I can tell. Okay, so I was like, well, it'd be nice to cut some other shapes. Can I use my craft products to make other shapes? I tried pushing my die into the clay. That did not work. And then I tried just laying down the die and cutting around it with a craft knife, or these are actually palette knives, which might be a little bit safer. And also, you probably, if you're working with your kids or grandkids on this, they might just have a bunch of Play-Doh toys to use, which would also work out great. But you could add some added interest and fun by like stamping some of your more unique special stamps. Or I'll show you in a second a particular idea that you probably wouldn't have Play-Doh tools to do. But I found that it was actually better to die cut whatever shape it was and then use that as a guide. So I cut out a tag with the tag die, and then I cut around it with the craft knife, which was much better than trying to cut around the die because I couldn't get as close to the die. All those little, when you cut your dies apart and they have that little bit of extra metal that connected them, that was, I think, particularly the problem in this instance. So now that I have a tag, and I experimented with it, this is like my third version of it because I was just trying to see what might work and maybe save you guys some time. I then put the bamboo skewer to make a little hole in it. Again, you could tie these to gift cards, tie these to gifts as tags, or you could make ornaments with them. So here I'm stamping a name. And that is something I think could be a little bit unique, is that you could personalize these. And when I stamped it down, it did stamp really well. It did leave a deep enough impression that I think is quite readable. But what I will say is it did leave a little bit extra impression of the surrounding stamp. So you definitely want to experiment with how much pressure to put. Now here I wanted to show you, I tried the star and the snowflake. I think the snowflake gives a much better result. The openness of the star, when I pressed it down, some of the Model Magic stuck to the inside of the star. And so when I lifted it up, it kind of like pulled some Model Magic with it and did not give as nice of an impression. You can see it right there happening again. So I actually think a more intricate stamp is better for stamping in this Model Magic. And then all I have to do, as I mentioned before, is just leave this to dry. There's no baking or anything like that. It does take a while to dry, and you don't have to dry it. You can actually just crunch it up and reuse it again forever like you might with something like Play-Doh. But in this instance, I wanted to show you like how you might make an ornament or a tag or something. Okay, so then I was thinking, is there anything in my craft room that I could use to make little shapes that I'm like basically were trash anyway? So that little white circle-y thing is the inside of a ATG refill, and I use that to cut out a shape too. So think about how you might be able to find other little things to make shapes, and then I stamp the snowflake. I think this kind of reminds me of like when you wax seal a letter, and so you might make some of those and put them on envelopes. That could be really fun. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know how you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.